You didn't leave. And the worst part? You already knew exactly who they were. Not at the end. Not after the damage was done. You knew at the beginning. In that one quiet moment, maybe over dinner, maybe in a late-night conversation, something inside you tightened. A signal. A warning your gut fired. Before your brain could silence it. And you silenced it anyway. Because here's what nobody prepares you for. The most psychologically devastating relationships don't start with cruelty. They start with the most intoxicating feeling you've ever experienced. And by the time the cruelty arrives, you're already too deep to see the walls closing in. So why does a self-aware, intelligent person ignore their own survival instincts? Why does the mind choose the cage over freedom and then defend the cage like it's worth protecting? That answer will disturb you. Because it has nothing to do with stupidity and everything to do with the darkest corners of your own psychology. Think back to the beginning. Everything felt electric. Your new partner wanted every moment of your time. And honestly, it felt incredible. Someone choosing you completely. Obsessively. Relentlessly. You told yourself this was what real passion looked like. But then, something shifted. You started feeling a strange, sinking weight. Every time your phone buzzed with a text from a friend, you noticed a quiet guilt creeping in. Whenever you tried to make independent plans, your partner never screamed, never made obvious demands. They simply pouted, subtly questioned your friends, casually suggested that maybe certain people in your life weren't right for you. And you brushed it off. You called it a quirk. You called it love. Behavioral scientists call it something else entirely. They call it the peacock dance. During the early phase of a relationship, manipulative partners perform a flawless psychological display, putting their absolute best self forward, while carefully concealing every toxic trait beneath the surface. Because you wanted the relationship to work, your brain began doing something terrifying. It started rationalizing. It took their suffocating possessiveness and rewired it, literally misinterpreting obsessive control as deep, romantic commitment. You weren't naive. You were neurologically hijacked, but that's only the beginning of why you stayed. The deeper reason runs straight back to your childhood. Psychoanalytic theory reveals an uncomfortable truth about human attachment. If you experienced insecure early bonds, emotional unavailability, inconsistency, neglect, your subconscious developed what researchers call an unconscious loyalty to those original figures. It built an internal template, and that template quietly searches for the familiar, not the healthy, the familiar. So when a toxic partner withdraws emotionally, stonewalls you, or creates chaos, and then momentarily rescues you, your nervous system doesn't register danger, it registers home. This is relationship inertia. The invisible force that convinces you the daily agony of staying is somehow less frightening than the uncertainty of leaving. Your brain, cornered by its own history, chooses familiar misery over the terror of the unknown. And the person across from you, they know exactly how to exploit that. Now picture a Thursday evening, a minor disagreement. Nothing catastrophic, just a small friction point about household decisions. A healthy partner talks it through. A toxic partner disappears. Not physically, they're sitting right there, but emotionally, they've evacuated the building entirely. Days of silence. Icy indifference. No eye contact. No resolution. Just the unbearable weight of their deliberate emotional absence pressing down on your chest. And what do? You start working double duty. You over-explain. You apologize for things you didn't do. You bend yourself into exhausting shapes, trying to restore a peace they intentionally shattered. They don't meet you halfway. They don't need to, because the moment you begin begging for basic acknowledgement, the power has already transferred. You're doing all the labor, they're maintaining total dominance. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you've convinced yourself this is just how love works. It isn't. It escalates. It always does. Slowly, almost imperceptibly. Your world begins to shrink. Fewer nights out with friends, fewer calls to family. The divide and conquer tactic is working not through dramatic ultimatums, but through accumulated guilt, subtle criticism, and the quiet disapproval hanging in every room you share. And then, the gaslighting begins. It doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives like a fog, one quiet comment at a time. You're remembering it wrong. I never said it like that. You're overreacting again. Each micro-invalidation is small enough to dismiss on its own. Together, they dismantle your grip on reality. You start doubting your own memory, your own perception, your own mind. And that is precisely the goal. A gaslighter doesn't need to break your body. They need to break your confidence in your own truth. Because once you stop trusting your own mind, you become entirely dependent on theirs. Here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Research shows that as you endure a toxic relationship over time, your baseline levels of self-esteem and hope measurably decrease. Not metaphorically, measurably. The abuse itself depletes the psychological resources you need to recognize the abuse. The trap becomes self-sustaining. You don't stay because you're weak. You stay because the relationship has systematically dismantled the part of you capable of leaving. They didn't just take your peace. They took your sense of deserving peace. And now there's one more red flag. Perhaps the most chilling one of all. Think about how your partner talks about every person they've ever loved. Every single ex-toxic, crazy, entirely at fault. A perfect parade of villains, with your partner as the perpetual, flawless victim. Your empathy lit up immediately. You felt the pull to be different. To be the one who finally showed them what real love looked like. But pause. When someone consistently avoids all accountability for every failed relationship they've ever had, that pattern doesn't vanish with you. You aren't the exception. You are the next chapter in a story that never changes. The protagonist is already writing your ending, and in their version, you'll be just as crazy as everyone who came before you. You've felt this before, haven't you? Some version of this. Some relationship where your gut quietly screamed, and you turned down the volume. Here's the darkest truth in all of this. They told you exactly who they were. Early on, in small moments, you chose to interpret as quirks instead of confessions. The person you fell in love with, that warm, attentive, passionate version, was a performance. A perfectly calibrated display designed to earn your attachment before the mask could slip. The question isn't whether you saw the signs. You did. The question is, what are you going to do now that you finally have the language for what you survived? If this opens something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes understanding the psychology is the first door out.